Oh, super. Bonjour, messieurs.
Hi, Jens.
Bonjour. Hello. Hi, guys. So tell me your thoughts about 2018. All of you, what you like about it, what you think. I know it was a difficult harvest, was rather tricky with rain and the pressure from mildew and the hot and dry summer. But maybe each one of you could give me your thoughts on 2018 in general. Now that the wines are here and there's some fantastic wines.
Well, from a vineyard standpoint, I think you said it all, James. It was a pretty difficult spring. Even if last year in 20 we had almost the same with heavy downpours. Not a huge amount of rain total if you look at average per month, but just heavy downpours that obviously wash down the copper and makes it very difficult to go back into the vineyards with the tractors. So those are really stressful period of times, especially when it happens on a Friday afternoon, and everybody wants to go on weekends. So then you have to tell them all that it's not going to be a weekend as planned, and they have to come back and do their job. So it's the type of situation that we have to face now. But that's all right. Everybody is on board with that. So the spring was tricky, and the rest was fairly easy. Obviously, there are other downsides of the vintage. One of them being the low yield, because Cabernet Sauvignon berries, were pretty small. The mildew took a small amount of it, but not in the best Cabernet Sauvignon blocks. Obviously, Merlot being the most affected by the spring, by the mildew in the spring. So all in all, just difficult at the beginning and fairly easy at the end. We harvested when we wanted. We were able to taste and select exactly the day we wanted to pick the fruit. No pressure at the time, and that's what we love in Bordeaux. It doesn't happen very often. In California, obviously, it's every year. Over here, when we can decide when to pick the fruit, we are ecstatic, obviously.
How would you describe the character of the wines? Obviously, I have my own ideas, but I'd be curious to see how you describe them.
It's a difficult question to answer to somebody who does that every day and does it so well. So I don't know. My point of view, it's there's warmth in this vintage. There's a generosity, which I love. The wines are plush, they're full, they are structured, but the fruit profile is fresh. It's vibrant, it's complete. The tannins are subtle and they never dry out. They're just firm and extremely present. But I think overall, it's a balance that we don't. If I look at the past 10 years, I don't believe we have a vintage like that. We'll have to go back to 2009 maybe to have this type of profile. So Bordeaux does not know this type of vintage regularly, and I think it still shows that we're able, in high density, no irrigation areas in warmer vintage, we're able to keep a balance with the Cabernet. That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I agree that particularly with your wines, but particularly Mouton, it's really amazing how they are rich and warm from a warm vintage, but at the same time, even more so than 2009, they still maintain very Bordeaux character in that they're fresh and the tannins are just seamless in the Mouton. It's really phenomenal wine. But I think that you can say obviously what you learned in almost 10 years, it's even better the 18 than 9. And if you really love Bordeaux, how do you think you did that? It's just details, or what do you think?
We've been making wines for centuries and we still improve. So no, obviously there's the vintage, there's all the work that has been done, the last 15 years, with details in the vineyards, the ability to obviously pick the younger vines in the blocks, at the right time, because obviously if you have 10 or 15% young vines, young Cabernet, even in the best blocks at Mouton on the plateau, they don't have the same profile, they don't have the same depth, they are simpler, they are higher alcohol, they don't have the same balance. So as you progress and you're able to go in that type of details, and you have a facility that allows you also to vinify and to maintain that level of precision, obviously you get a picture that's more and more clear as you go. And so I think in this type of vintage, it shows all what has been implemented the last few years absolutely shows and shines in the wine.
These wines are just, they still are so Bordeaux. You know what you love about Bordeaux, with the freshness and those fine tannins that really frame the wine, or where in Mouton, it just completely is integrated. Just like a tableau, like a painting with the paint on it, just goes across the whole canvas. So, okay, well, Philippe, anything to add?
No. I was listening to what Jean-Emmanuel was saying. It was interesting because we were discussing it with Eric Tourbier the other day, and we were trying to sort of qualify it with one 2018 with one word, and the word that came to mind, the first word that came to my mind was density. Clearly, the density was. I mean, it's always interesting to try and define a vintage with one word.
Yeah.
2009 is more sort of velvet. 2010 is square, and 2018 is dense.
Yeah, you're right.
You have this sort of strong density there, and for all the reasons that Jean-Emmanuel described, and that you stressed very clearly, and the first word that comes to mind is density. Other vintages it's balance, other vintages it's elegance, other vintages there in 2018 for me it's very personal, but for me it's a dense vintage, very dense, and for all the reasons that clearly Jean-Emmanuel was mentioning. So I think that's why it's interesting. It's a very interesting vintage. And it's really a vintage that you want to follow to see, how is this thing going to age. And that's where all the secret is.
I was going to ask you, I was saying, I'm going to ask them how it's going to age, and you just said it. So what do you think? What's your gut feeling? It's hard to say, but
I think it's going to. I think it's going to open up. I think we're tasting the tip of the iceberg.
Nice.
And I think that there's a lot there under the water. So I think we're going to be maybe it's wishful thinking. Okay, because it's my wine, so it's wishful thinking. But clearly, it's a vintage that we're going to be tasting regularly.
Yeah.
So if you want to come back to us regularly and say, hold on, where are you on this 2018? We'll be glad to do it, and I think it's going to be a very interesting video. It's like as you know, you said it much better than we do. It's like a flower. So and to my understanding, the flower is going to open up.
Gives such pleasure already, even just as babies. They really sort of touch you. They're very emotional and beautiful wines, sort of exceptional wines also because of that strange growing season where it's amazing that the wines came out so wonderfully.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If we said to you guys, okay, here's what your next harvest is going to be, and you would probably say, oh my God, that's going to be really hard to make a great wine. And then you taste these things and they're just, they're just exceptional in that sense, exceptional in how it came out with such exceptional quality.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's as you were saying, it's putting the colors together.
Yeah,
and putting the colors together is close to magic. It works or it doesn't work, and there in 2018 it did work. So
bravo.
We're all very happy.
Let's try the Armailhac then.
Yes.
Pleasure.
For Armailhac, this is really one of the best, I think, Armaillacs maybe ever. That, like you said, the density and depth and tannin structure is pretty exceptional. Is there anything in particular? How did you pull that off? What do you think you did differently? I remember even from barrel, it was impressive.
It was extremely impressive. Actually, it was so impressive. I had no idea in what direction the wine was going to head, because I don't believe I had seen an Armailhac that was so structured and powerful at the beginning of when we tested on Premier 2 years ago. Low yield, and again, as we said, a team that has been implementing year after year some improvements in the vineyards. And also in the cellar as well. So, and you combine that with a small crop and a pretty good extraction level, which at the time felt a bit ambitious for me. But but because they also worked, and that's where you see that the experience is extremely helpful, and the experience, especially that's grown step by step. The team now at Armailhac knows how to age this type of wine, and they've been extending the number of months. Now they are getting close to 18 months, which was not the case a few years ago, and they are up to 50% new oak as well, and that really completely changed the way this type of wines evolve. So I think it was the right vintage with the right, crossing the right approach from the team there.
No, well done. How about now that we have the Pastoral? So
yes.
Again, this has always been described as, of course, it's the second wine of Clerc. I think you release it later. It was focused on on-premise sales like restaurants.
So far, we just, the last vintage we released is 2015. Mm-hmm. But we thought it would be interesting to taste the Pastoral within the range in order to maybe better understand which place for each wine. And I would say from my side, concerning 2018, that what I really love in this vintage is that each wine is at its really real place.
Yeah, I understand.
With the specificity of each terroir, each knowledge, each vineyard, and tasting all of them is really a great experience on this point of view, because Armailhac is Armailhac, and what Armailhac should be, Pastoral as well, and so on. And I think it's a key point for the whole range.
I agree with you. That's a point of the vintage too. For example, 2009, that was, if you wanted to be negative about it, sometimes I think they're very marked by the 2009 character. You say millésime de soleil or solar, or whatever you want to say, a sunny. And I think that in French, particularly in Bordeaux, when you say that, it's positive, but also there's a little bit of negative character, where in the sense that it's very marked by the sunshine. And you're so right that all the wines, and of course of the 800 wines or 1,000 wines I've tasted, they really have the different, Saint-Emilion, or if you want to describe particular cru with special character, 18 maintains that, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think to go back to what you said, James, we in Bordeaux are getting used to the ability to harvest when we want, which was, in the recent history, very rarely the case. And so when a vintage like 2009 happened, many just pushed and pushed and pushed, because, that was really a situation that we didn't know very frequently. And so I think in this case, maybe, some wines went a bit too far. Now we are more used to that ability to harvest when we want. And so we spend more time testing the fruit and less time looking at the weather forecast and the amount of botrytis, because, it's seldom an issue nowadays. And so I think because of that, we are more we observe a bit more how is the balance, in the berries when we taste of tannins and acid and sugar. And I think we make better decisions today, just because we are getting more used to these conditions.
Very good. No, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a real trend, and it's really exciting. So let's try the Clerc now. So Clerc, as always, a little bit more firm and tighter and more austere than the Armailhac. But again, this beautiful pureness of fruit. Did you use any Carmenere in this one?
Yeah, there's 1%.
Okay, so there's always
must be 0.8. Yes.
Okay. Honestly, I couldn't tell. I wouldn't.
Me neither.
Yeah. I dare to be able to tell you that they could taste the Carmenere, but I always find it interesting that there's a little bit in there, and it's very balanced and
we very much like our two little pieces of land of Carmenere.
Yeah,
and I go and see them very regularly. I know exactly where they are. There's two very specific pieces on the property of Carmenere, and I really it's a funny experience, and I think they're right to keep them there, just to see how it evolves from one year to another.
It's funny, you guys. Yeah, you know where it is. Let's try the Petit Mouton now.
Just something, James, before we move on. There's you mentioned the freshness in the Clerc Milon. Something quite interesting is there's a whole week of difference between in harvest dates between Armailhac and Clerc Milon. Wow. Clerc Milon being harvested a week behind after, and so it really shows the difference in terroir because they are not synchronized in picking. You have Clerc Milon is picked a week after, so it's a very different site that reacts differently, and so it needs to be harvested when it's ready.
Ready. Okay.
Petit Mouton, sorry.
No worries. So Petit Mouton is for me one of the best I've had. Really fantastic. The quality of the tannins is really fantastic.
We really grew Petit Mouton in a very, very slow pattern. We didn't say, hold on, that's the blending, and then here we go, and let's go forward. I think they really they learned how to walk as they started walking, and I think that's quite a fascinating thing. I really followed them for the last 15 years on Petit Mouton, and I must say in the last couple of years, Petit Mouton has really arrived at its cruising speed. But it took them a couple of years to arrive at the cruising speed, and now they've really done it, and it's really interesting. I mean, they did it slowly. It's always the same thing in the wine. I'm not going to teach you anything in the wine business. You have to be slow.
Yeah.
And they really sort of did it. They did it step by step, blending by blending. At each vintage, they learned a little more about the blending. And I think now they've really hit it on the nail, and it's I think the result is fantastic.
Well, okay, now let's try the Mouton. I have to admit, I tasted this a number of times over the last 10 days.
Yes.
The quality of tannins is really phenomenal, and the depth of fruit, and I'm sure that analytically it's very high in tannins, but at the same time it just it has such a purity and balance and polish to it. It's really something. And what's the percentage of there's such purity of Cabernet fruit in it?
It's actually 86, so it's almost pure. Yes. You mentioned the tannins; it's the highest in grams per liter of the whole lineup. But the definition of those tannins is completely different. It just coats and fills all the space. It just not only coats, but it fills the space also. It's just a very, very unique.
Exactly. It just spreads across the palate. I like what you say. It just fills in all the space there. And that's because normally with Cabernet, a lot of times you have this linear tannin that runs through the middle of the wine. And this just spreads out across your palate.
But as we say usually of the complementarity between Cabernet, the structure, and the Merlot, which brings the flesh.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to me to show that Cabernet can be the frame and the flesh at the same time. And I think that's what this wine does, show very well.
And then it just, and it really opens on the finish. It's not at all, as Philippe said earlier, it's not at all tight on the finish.
But this wine actually never shut down, never tightened up during the whole aging. And even when it was bottled the first 2 weeks of June, if we didn't know it was bottled, we would not have known by tasting it. The wine did not blink an eye. It was completely staged exactly as it was before, which is fairly unusual.
It's really amazing. Really one of the best moutons I've ever had. Like I keep on people, and sometimes I don't want to use like old comparisons because most, now I'm so old, most people haven't drunk wines like that. But it reminds me of something like 59, and 59 is such an amazing wine with that rich fruit, but beautiful tannin. But of course, it's a modern, it's much more modern and precise. But what a wine! It's really phenomenal.
Can I say that, James? Can I say that I agree with you? I mean, we're on this Zoom. We're the two old ones. So we've tasted the 59 and they haven't, you see. So that's why they're so quiet. And that's why they don't say anything.
I hope I didn't interrupt you.
Maybe we can take the opportunity, Mr. Sereys, to ask you for a bottle of 59.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the bad news is that now that you've talked about the 59, I'll have to open a bottle one day, you see. So, but I think I'll execute myself to doing that for their pleasure. But no, you're absolutely right. It's interesting because 59 is also a year, as you know very well, where the vintage was very small. The vintage was small for two reasons. First of all, because the crop was small, and secondly, for reasons that I absolutely can't explain because I wasn't born at that time. They selected a lot. The selection was very strong, and if you listen to the people who did the 59, when they talked about it, they really said we really selected 90% of the selection was the Plateau of Mouton.
I didn't. Oh, interesting.
In other words, they really pulled for reasons which is their own reasons, their technical reasons, but they really did a very strong selection in the 59. It's probably one of the reasons why it's maintained such a strong balance until now. And you're right, it really looks like the 2018. It's one of these wines where you have you have a mouthful of wine, and it's really there, and you can't miss it. You absolutely can't miss it.
The center palate is such beautiful, pure fruit, but then you have just these really fine and amazing tannins. And I think that, of course, it's what God gave you in that harvest, but also it was important how you guys interpreted it in the winemaking as well, in the selection and being very soft and just really getting the real character out of it. It could have gone another way. I believe if you had made it like you did the 2009, which is a great wine, but back then people were looking for more extraction and bigger wines. Now you guys really, we're Bordeaux, and this is, we want to make an incredible wine from Bordeaux, and it's just phenomenal. Really, it's
absolutely. And the only thing I can pray for now is that the 2018 will open up as well as the 59.
Yeah.
And then we would then maybe the government will give me the Ordre National du Mérite.
I'll give you mine.
Okay. No. Keep yours, and then I'll try. And if the 2018 evolves as well as the 59, then I might give a call to Macron and say, "Can I have the Ordre National du Mérite also?" Like James.
I would bet on it.
Okay.
So listen, thank you so much for the tasting, and it was really great to taste, particularly share the Mouton 18 with you. I really think it's perfection. It's just a phenomenal wine. I can't think of a better wine. And like we said, the 59 historically was a perfect Mouton as well, like one of the all-time greats. So I really think 18 Mouton is going to be like that as well. So well done, everyone. And thank you so much for the amazing conversation. I look forward to tasting the 20 en premiere. I think it'll be by Zoom. But anyways, that'll be fun too. And I look forward to seeing you all physically very soon.
Hope so.
Thank
Yes,
you.
please. As soon as you can come, do come.
Absolument. Okay, mes amis, thanks again. Have a great
Thank
day.
you very much.
And look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Thank you very much, James.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
good day.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, bientôt.